Okay, this is Topalov versus Kamsky, played in the Mtel Masters in 2006. Topalov playing white, plays d4, Kamsky plays d5, and now we have the Slav defence, which is a rock solid defence against d4, a kind of relative to the Karakan. So they both feature this pawn on c6, and black's cementing his outpost pawn on d5, or his occupying pawn on d5. Now this has become a very trendy move, even though it looks a bit weird. Black may be threatening b5 in some variations. It also often provokes white to play this move c5 now, and black sometimes is not too worried by this, because if black can get in a liberating e5 later, this could expose the c5 pawn as being a bit weak. But one of the justifications of c5 to a6 is that a b6 is not going to be as good. White can often just take on b6 and then like knight a4, and maybe the c5 square can be used as an outpost. So that's why there's a bit more positional justification when black plays a6. So we continue, knight d7, bishop f4. Already you can feel the pressure on the dark squares. Now black plays not an intuitive move, but just chasing this bishop. So it retreats back to d2. Now back to f6, the knight goes back, rook c1, g6 now. The bishop's probably better on g7 than on e7, so this seems to be quite a logical idea. Now h3, queen c7, g3 now. So again, the bishop might return to f4 to gain a tempo on black's queen, which it now does. And again, the knight attacks the bishop on f4. So there's quite a seesaw game so far. But the bishop, instead of going back to d2, now goes to g5. So is Topalov trying to provoke a weakness by encouraging black to move one of these pawns forward to evict the bishop? Black does. Bishop moves back now to d2. And now e4. This is quite brave, because Topalov is willing to leave his d pawn as being a backward pawn, what's known as a backward pawn on this d line. So he's looked at the position and all the factors and thinks he's got some compensation for this. It does free his game a bit to have played e4. So knight d7 to f8 is played. Maybe black was or has started thinking about the liberating e5 move to try and weaken this structure. But here I think white could just safely just take it. Should we have a quick look though? e5 as a new variation. de. Now knight takes e5. This might be okay for black. On initial inspection, maybe there's not much wrong with it. So maybe it's fine. Anyway, so knight f8 was played though. So queen b3. Topalov's eyeing f7 and also this b7 pawn at the same time. So that's quite an interesting square for the queen to go. Also, maybe a rook's going to come to d1 soon to support that d pawn. So the knight now jumps into e6. So what we see already, one of the points then of the knight f8 to try and put pressure on this backward pawn. And now we see another point. Black wants to create a blockade on d5. So white's recapturing on d5, and now bishop d2. So bishop e5, a bit of a controversial decision. The dark square is weakened. Often this can result in a loss later on because of a kingside attack. And that was kind of the case in this game. But black must have thought it was worth it for some reason. Sometimes it can be worth it. And so h5, rook e1. Now e6, this is quite spectacular. The computers wouldn't really rate this move because it would seem to be just losing a pawn in the short term. And in fact, what do computers think are a good move here? My analytical assistant is suggesting at the moment queen a4. What is the idea of queen a4? Queen a4, bishop f5. The idea seems to be bishop a5. Queen d7. Okay, with some more sort of pressure on the dark squares. Anyway, so this is a very interesting move. So one of the ideas intuitively behind behind this move is it's a follow-up with rook takes e6 as the exchange shack. It's a brilliant exchange shack which Topalov seems to specialise in more than any other grandmaster. So what is the purpose of this exchange shack? With the double pawns in the centre, often there's a dislocation of communication in black's position. Can the pieces communicate between the queen side and king side as easily? Sometimes in the past there has been pawn sacks to create double pawns in the opponent's position like this. So Topalov is thinking that there'll be a communication difficulty now with this extra material, but was it really worth the exchange shack? Will these two bishops come alive to attack black's king? Well, we'll see that Topalov does do this. He brings these bishops alive to start probing into the black's king position. Here rook e5 is now threatening rook takes h5 check, so this has to be defended. Now queen e3, so the bishop and queen are coordinating to get into the dark squares now. And now this bishop comes away from its fianchetto square to occupy this diagonal, to always put pressure now on this g6 pawn. So pressure is starting to emerge on the black king position, and we'll see if this communication difficulty is evidenced or not. Queen h6, a very interesting move. Queen takes d2. The bishop can't be taken because I think it's a mate, a forced mate. We'll have a quick look. Bishop takes g6, king g8 say. And now actually it may not be a forced mate, but this does seem to give good advantage to white. Black will have to give up material to stave off a mating attack. For example, this would be a mating 6 if queen e1, king g2. For example, alright, let's just see why this, just bishop e8, checkmate in fact. So if white reaches this position, it's game over. So black played rook g8 to defend this g6 pawn. So these bishops are working very well now on the dark squares and the light squares. So black's king's under fire. Bishop at a5 now. So white takes a bit of time to move the bishop away for the moment, and then move it back to evict the queen. And now this bishop is coming in on the e6 pawn. So Topalov, is he ready to take this pawn? Yes, he takes the pawn now. And my analytical assistant is saying that white's actually much better now. So all of a sudden things have dramatically changed from a computer perspective. Queen g7, and it's starting to be uncomfortable for black to defend this. So rook d5, offering an exchange sack, so black would be the exchange down. Or pardon me, black would be more equal on material. But bishop f5 was played. Now rook f7. And now there was a very tactical blow here. Can you spot it? So white's queen's en prise, but remember black's queen's en prise as well. However, there is also a mate in 7. It's not just the case of winning material. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was rook takes e7 with the idea that, for example, after king d8, there's queen takes f7 with a mate in 5 now. For example, knight d7 would accelerate the mate because of queen e8, king c7, rook takes d7, rook takes d7, bishop e5, queen d6, for example, bishop takes d6, rook takes d6, queen c8. So rook takes here on e7 was the final blow to a very entertaining tactical game. I would look at a few variations, but the length of the video on YouTube is 10 minutes, so I think I'll end it here in this final position. Fine attacking game by Topalov, and a beautiful exchange shack early on to dislocate the communication between the queen side and king side.